Mr. Prime Minister.
Jack.
Simple, friendly, personal question. How's your health?
That's great. Always has been, I hope it always will be, Jack. You look pretty good yourself.
You've had 10 very tough years, and now you're sitting at a crisis in both the affairs of the nation and perhaps in your political life. Don't you feel a little bit edgy?
No, because I wouldn't describe it as a crisis. I would describe it as a normal evolution, coming together of various threads which are obliging people now to make decisions. And I don't call that a crisis. I call it a great opportunity. We're faced in our political history and our economic life, we're faced with some very basic decisions, and I like that. I like people to choose. I don't like them to sit on the fence.
I can't let you away that easy, Mr. Prime Minister. You know, the reports of your political death or resignation may be exaggerated, but I've never, in all your years as Prime Minister, seen the Westalls, the Gwynns, the Fotheringhams, not your enemies particularly, after your throat that maybe you should quit. Maybe it's time you left. Now, give me a gut response to that, Mr. Prime.
Well, I just remember that in 1972, the Tories were on the verge of taking over, and the press had discounted me as a future Prime Minister, and the same thing in 1974. And somehow, in spite of these people, I managed to come back with the Liberal Party. So why not again, Jack?
Doesn't that prove that when the time comes to campaign, you're a magnificent and still a charismatic campaigner, but that you've left many things undone?
Well, I don't know about the campaign. We're still probably many months away from it.
Oh, well, let me...
But in terms of things undone, I'd like to tell you about the things I have done, but perhaps some other time.
Well, in a moment or two. But first of all, let's, be quite frank with each other. Your cabinet has been decimated. You're the only survivor in 10 years. Shall I list all those who've gone? I mean, all your best, many of your best, and all your best English-speaking ministers have vanished, right?
Well, why do you say English-speaking? You could say French-speaking, too. You know, Pelletier's gone, Jean-Luc Pépin's gone, Jean Marchand's gone. You always seem to think it's the English who go.
But listen,
I've always thought that politics was a very mobile place, and ministers who come in perform to their utmost, they wear themselves out, and then they leave. And
but just a minute.
If I had still the same cabinet as 10 years ago, I'm sure you'd be the first to say, oh, these tired old people, they've been there for 10 years, why don't you bring some new people in?
But Mitchell, Sharp, and Drury, and MacDonald, and even Richardson, all these people. And the book about you by Radwanski was a good book. Did you feel it really painted you?
Well, I'm afraid I didn't read his book, but I have some friends who did, and they say it's very good. But you name some of these people. My recollection is that before Mitchell Sharp or Drury or these others left, I was being told by the same people in the media, oh, I've got ministers who've been there 15 years, why don't they move on, and so on. It's automatic, Jack. When a minister moves on, he suddenly becomes the greatest asset I've ever had.
Well,
and I'm sure probably be true of me. When I move on, suddenly people say, well, he wasn't all that bad. It's certainly true for the ministers. I haven't seen one, whether it be Turner or MacDonald or Sharp or Drury or Marchand, who when they're with me weren't the lowest of bums, incompetent and everything else. As soon as they leave, gee, what a great loss.
Ah, but you've never been paranoid about the media, have you?
Just answering your question, Joel.
Jack. But on the other hand, I mean, this man Turner, well, let's be frank today. He's quite obviously standing in the wings hoping you're going to stumble. Is that a fair question to put to you?
It's a question which I can't answer, which I think you should ask him. When he left, he told me that he was leaving for family reasons, and he's a man of his word, and I took his word.
But look at that newsletter the other day. I read that and I shuddered and I thought, my goodness gracious me. What's going on in the Liberal Party? Do you still have the party's loyalty?
Well, Jack, there was a leadership vote at the last convention. There was one at the one before. We have, under our Constitution, a vote for or against a leadership convention after each general election. And I've always been told that they didn't need a leadership convention. So I'm not
you're as full of zip and zap as you were in '68. Hey? Not quite?
Not quite, Jack. No, I'm a much wiser and intelligent man than I was in '68.
But the other day you made a remark, I'm sure you were correctly reported about. You were a bit down in the dumps and you said, I'd like to handle some of these hot potatoes out to other people. Hand me a hot potato.
that's...
But you can't handle.
All right, that's participatory democracy. You know, when I involve people in decisions, that used to be okay. And the story has been in latter years, this arrogant Trudeau, you know, this guy who thinks he knows all the truth, this guy who doesn't listen to other people. So my attitude is sometimes, well, okay, let's hear what the people have to say on this particular hot potato. And suddenly, I'm not showing enough leadership because I'm saying I want to listen to the people.
You see, that's
so, you know, you have to make up your mind.
But
you want more leadership, and then you get the strength and what you call the arrogance, or do you want a little more cringing and followship, and then you say, my gosh, there's no leadership in this government. You have to make up your minds, and I believe I can show both.
Well, now, as a reasonably intelligent reporter, I was totally mystified until I read the transcript of your press conference on September the 14th about the situation in capital punishment. Hate even to raise the subject, but it came out, if you'll forgive me, Mr. Prime Minister, like hypocrisy. Here you're saying we've dealt with it, we've finished it, we're done with it, but Lang has raised a good idea. Could you put that precise situation about the extension of, what was that? Instrument of direct democracy.
Yeah,
so that people can understand where you stand on it, because you're not against capital punishment on moral or principle grounds.
Very simply, Jack, I oppose capital punishment because I don't think it's an effective means of self-defense for society.
You're not a nice Nelly about it.
I don't oppose it on moral grounds. If it is necessary for society to hang people, this is in the category of society having a war. Sometimes you have to have a war where people are killed. Sometimes you have to hang people if this is the way for the society to defend itself. But what I say is that those who want to hang a man or have a war have the burden of the proof that their remedy, hanging or shooting, will be effective. In other words, that it will effectively protect society.
That's clear.
And, okay, that's clear. Now, this has been my position, it's the position of my cabinet, it's the position of my party, and it's the position of the leaders of the other parties too, Clark and Broadbent. We all voted for abolition. This being said, and it's not a change of my position, because I made it clear that I wouldn't have a referendum, that the government wouldn't have a referendum, but I'm saying that in many democracies, and you know, as a Westerner you should know this, and I believe you do, in the 20s and 30s, the Western provinces had these instruments of direct democracy, where you would have a right as people to have a referendum on something, to go against the government of the day. This is not a new idea.
Are you saying that sometime in the future there might be a decision made by somebody to extend the instruments of direct democracy and include petitions, not just on capital punishment, but maybe on marijuana and abortion?
What I'm saying is that on some issues, when you get enough signatures in the country, you know, it might be 500,000, might be 1 million. I believe in the case of the Western provinces, it was something like 10,000. That the people can say, well, look, the government has made such a decision, in this case, abolishing capital punishment. We think the government is wrong, and we don't want to wait till the next election to know, to change the government. And even if we do, we'll be electing another party whose leader also believes in abolishing capital punishment. So we want to choose ourselves, just as they've done in California with Proposition 13.
But that's a way down the road, perhaps.
It's something that all I said at the press conference, it shouldn't shock you people out there who are supposed to inform the people, but somebody's thinking of it, in this case, Otto Lang.
Not hypocrisy.
Well,
it looks like a cheap shot to get an election advantage. You know, the Liberals aren't that tough on it.
Well, no, because the Liberals are not changing their minds.
Okay, clear enough.
If the people want to make a different decision, you know, what is wrong with at some point saying that people can decide?
I hate even to think of it. That would mean a constitutional amendment for that kind of recall initiative and whatnot, wouldn't it?
Yes, it probably would, Jack.
Can we take the constitutional proposals very simply, sir? The Senate. Most of the ordinary people in the country, everybody except the senators want to wipe it out, right?
Well, want to wipe it out or change it?
Wipe it out, really, and change it into a House of Federation.
Ah, well, change it into something else, right.
That's right. So let's not argue about that. Somewhere in the midst of all this business, people have got the impression that your government, in some proposition, is trying to downgrade the Queen. Now, I know what your position is. Your position is that you have not changed anything, that you have merely put into practical effect, or will put into practical effect, what's happening now.
Right.
But tell those people who use this as ammunition against you if they are wrong.
Well, I think this is a time to use the word hypocrisy. In terms of downgrading the monarchy, Her Majesty has come to Canada more often in the past 10 years when I've been Prime Minister than in any other previous time in our history. More than Mr. Pearson, more than Mr. Diefenbaker's time put together. I think out of 10 years, Her Majesty's been here, I think, 9 times. Now, that's not bad for somebody who wants to downgrade the monarchy.
How come the impression got abroad?
Well, how come the impression? It's because some people, as you use your words, are hypocrites. And when we try to write out in constitutional language what the practice is today, they take a political pretext to attack this.
Funny issue.
You know, that's what I call playing political football with the monarchy, and I think that is very dangerous.
I mean, as far as the monarchy is concerned, you told me before that as long as it's useful, you'll keep it. The country should keep it.
That's what I've said, and I don't think it's worth starting a fight on the monarchy. And the last thing my government or myself would have wanted to do was to try and rewrite provisions on the monarchy. What we're trying to do is write them, Jack. You know, under our present Constitution, which goes back to 1867, no provision is made for the evolution of the monarchy in the past 100 years. Back in 1947, under Mr. Mackenzie King, letters patent were issued to permit the Governor-General to exercise certain prerogatives which belong to Her Majesty.
Fair enough. Now, this
So all we're doing is saying, let's put that right in the Constitution.
This Bill of Rights has got me baffled, I'll tell you. The Bill of Rights is part of the constitutional amendment which was fully within the powers of the federal government to enact. Is that correct?
Say that again,
The
Jack?
Bill of Rights is something you can do without conferring with the provinces.
Mr. Diefenbaker had a Bill of Rights in 1960.
But you're going to put it in the Constitution.
Right, and we're only going to bind the federal government. But rather than do it by simple statute, as Mr. Diefenbaker did, we want to constitutionalize it. And we're telling the provinces, we hope you will do the same. I think something like 7 out of 10 provinces have bills of rights. The federal government has a bill of rights. Okay, let's put them all together and all agree that our governments will protect the basic rights.
As far as language is concerned, really the Bill of Rights would just entrench the Official Languages Act, more or less.
More or less, right.
Come into the Official Languages Act and come into the economy. That's one thing about which, Mr. Prime Minister, you must be pessimistic. The 84-cent dollar.
You're talking about official language.
No, I'm talking about the economy. I was thinking of the cuts you had to make, and many other things as well.
Why should I be pessimistic? Because
1 million unemployed?
Something like 2,300,000 jobs created in a period of less than 10 years.
Is that
faster
comfort?
than any other growth rate of any other country in the Western world?
Is that comfort for the unemployed?
Yeah, well, it should be, Jack. If this society is healthy enough to create jobs at a growth rate of 3.7 a year, which is double that of the United States, faster than any other country in the world, it means that we've got a healthy economy.
But
it also means that because of the baby boom and because of the new decision of women to participate in the labor force and the decision of young people to enter the labor force younger, it means that more people are coming on the labor market. But once again, we're creating jobs at a rate faster than any other Western or including Japanese society.
If I say to you, Mr. Prime Minister, after 10 minutes, the dollar is down to 84, 85 cents. We've got close to 1 million unemployed. You're cutting back on the UIC program, of which you were terribly proud indeed.
Still am.
You're reshaping family allowances. You're cutting a lot of grants and whatnot to the arts and culture. And things generally
Well, that's a bit of a mishmash, Jack. You want to talk about them one after the other? You talk about the dollar. What is the fact that the Canadian dollar is worth less compared to the United States? What does that mean?
It means that
it just means that the Americans are be able to buy our goods at bargain prices.
True, sir.
And that means jobs for us.
But true,
and
sir.
that's why before the dollar was devalued, you know, for the 5 or 6 years when the Canadian dollar was worth more than the American dollar, we were having either trade deficits or very shaky surpluses.
Well, in that case,
3 years ago, we had a deficit of $500 million in trade. since the dollar is devalued, we had last year 2 billion surplus. This year we're going to have 4 billion.
I know.
This means jobs in Canada.
But sir...
So, well, there's no magic reason why the Canadian dollar and the American dollar should be worth the same thing.
Oh, but carry your logic a step further. Things would be better for us if the dollar were down to 75 cents. But what about the cost of imports?
The whole point of a lower Canadian dollar, Jack, is that cost of imports is higher. And that's why I say it's good for jobs. Our people will buy less in the United States, they'll produce more in Canada, which means jobs in Canada rather than jobs in the United States. It's very simple. One of the reasons why the dollar is lower is because too many Canadians in those lovely years past were buying everything in the States, buying imported goods, they were spending their vacations abroad, they were enjoying all foreign goods, and the Canadian dollar became, you know, too abundant on the markets of the world, and that's why its value fell. Now the consequence will be that the foreigners will be buying in Canada and Canadians will be buying in Canada, and that's good for the economy.
Well, there's another point. I hate to raise it when you're going in high gear. But if I were a foreign investor and I looked at Canada today and I think, we've still got that Quebec problem, we've still got that indecision in that nation, I think I'll hang away from investing in the country. You said I made a couple of major speeches. Do you really think that if you were a multimillionaire outside that you'd put your money into Canada right now with your election not till next spring, with the problems in Quebec?
I certainly would put it in right now precisely because the Canadian dollar is low. And I think this is a good time for foreigners to invest in Canada. Of course, an investor is a very cautious person, and some of them may not have my optimism, and I hope yours, in terms of the strength and the future of this country. But it should be quite obvious to anyone who looks at history, to anyone who knows Quebec, to anyone who sees the way they are reacting, to anyone who sees the Quebec government itself, which is procrastinating and not daring to put the referendum question because it knows it's going to lose it. It seems to me that any speculator worth his salt would say things look pretty good there, and obviously separatism is going to be beaten, and obviously Trudeau is going to win, and obviously this is going to be a great country, so let's invest.
You're that confident?
Well, you're asking me if I were a multi-millionaire American. I'm just telling you.
I'm now asking you, you're that confident that Levesque really is not on his last gasp but can't win?
He could win if we made enough mistakes. And I think our moves on the Constitution, our moves on languages are meant to make sure that we don't make mistakes. If Quebecers are made to feel that they're not welcome in this country, they will get out. And that's why I think it's so important to take certain steps to make them feel welcome in this country. And this just means telling Quebecers that they can speak in French to their government. It doesn't mean your brothers in British Columbia have to speak French or learn French. It just means that Quebecers can speak French. That's what our official language is.
We've gone through this before, and of course...
But you never seem to remember.
Oh, I do, sir, but I always come back and say that if the policy wasn't understood across the country, only you and your government were to blame.
Well, I suppose that's
you don't really feel that as a basic kind of bed of bigotry that's out to cause this trouble, do you? Not in the media, I don't think.
I don't think. I just think that sometimes they don't understand and they don't explain properly. But I do accept my share of the blame of not having explained it more day in and day out. I do know that in the '72 election I didn't even raise the question of the official languages Act. Because I thought people understood it. Now, you know, 6 years later, I realize they haven't.
Matter of fact, you're a bit off.
That's why I'm putting it on the air right now, to tell them once again what it means. It doesn't mean making the country French. It just means letting Quebecers be French. And, you know, there's this book which seems to be selling out in British Columbia.
Don't mention it. Don't give it a plug.
Why not? I mean, you know, the accusation is that we're beginning with bilingualism, then the whole country will be French. You know, this is like
nonsense.
Telling the United States
that it's going
to all be Spanish-speaking because there's 20 million Spanish-speaking.
I don't want to be too helpful to you in any way, shape, or form. I don't happen to subscribe to that particular book, which is full of some facts and half-truths and false assumptions. But you have good friends in this country who say, that Trudeau is a terrific guy. But somewhere over the 10 years, he did not use his undoubted wizardry with words and leadership qualities to give this nation a direction. Now, don't you feel a little guilty on that count?
No, I don't. In the years when I'd be taking the most leadership, people would say, look at this guy. He thinks he's the only one who knows where the country should go. He's trying to lead us down some path we don't want to follow. And when I take leadership just in the month of August to announce almost out of a blue sky when I'm back from Bonn, the new economic measures, people say, oh yeah, he's showing too much leadership. He's doing it without having consulted all his cabinet colleagues.
That's right.
You know, make up your mind.
Yeah.
What do you want?
No, but at the same time, he said he finally showed leadership in the economy with your 3.7 billion instant cuts, wasn't it?
That's right.
And then you wishy-washed on the editorial, on the election for so long.
What's wishy-washy about using the constitutional mandate to have an election when I want? You know, you people in the media have been calling an election every 2 months, I think, for the past year. But you've been calling it, and then I haven't called it, so you say I've been wishy-washy. You've been the phony prophets. You've been calling it for, he's going to have it in April, he's going to have it in July, he's going to have it in September. So when I don't, I'm the guy who takes the blame. You're the guys who don't know how to call the shots.
Well, you're speaking to the other members of the media, because I'm not in the business of predicting elections.
Well, exactly, nor should you, Jack.
But
you know that we have 5 years to go, and we can take 5 years.
Oh, you can't go beyond...
Jim Callahan is doing.
You can't go beyond the very latest July next year.
Are you making a prediction?
I'm asking you, sir. I mean, you can't, can you?
Well, more or less.
I mean, McKing did it once. Abby Bennett did it once, I believe.
Yeah. I think that the return of the writs was something like the end of July 74, so that would bring us to the end of July 79.
I wonder if your advisors are beginning to scratch their heads and come to you and say, hey, that Clark plan, 5,000 write-off on mortgages and 1,000 on property, we got to go for that. We got to pick that up and run with it. Are you not tempted?
Don't worry.
Will you pick that up and run with it?
Don't worry with that one, Jack. That's going to cost $1,600,000,000 as a minimum, and probably much more. It does nothing for the middle income and low income people. It's all advantageous towards the upper middle and wealthy people, but the poor people who are renting a house get nothing out of the Clark plan. The poor people who can't afford to buy a house get nothing out of the Clark plan. He's helping the people with houses and the people maybe who don't even have mortgages.
You mean to say that under the Clark...
There's about 2,100,000 homeowners who will be helped. The others who are homeowners already have cleared their mortgage. Their house is mortgage-free. So what will they do under the Clark plan? They'll just go to the bank and they'll borrow under the Clark plan, and they'll get a $5,000 gift from the government. You know, I'll do that. You'll probably do that on your island, Jack. If this plan goes through, you'll just go on and mortgage your island. Why shouldn't you? You'll get a $5,000 gift. Now, do you need this kind of help, Jack? From Mr. Clark?
I'm not here to answer questions, Mr.
No,
Trudeau.
I'm just illustrating the meaning
of
it.
I get the point. You know. But on the other hand, if I did go out and borrow something on my little shack in Salt Spring, I might be putting people to work by spending it somewhere else.
Well, I would hope that if you have... Look, if you're borrowing it, it's indeed because you want to put people to work somewhere else. Why don't you do it now? I'm sure you can do it without getting a gift from the government. That's the whole point. Why does the government have to give you a gift of $5,000 so that you spend your money?
Mr. Trudeau, we must bring this delightful interview to an end, but before I do that, I want you to... a serious question. We haven't got into philosophy at all today. You haven't lectured me. You've been political. You are given to lecturing on occasions.
Well, only with sober people like you, Jack.
When you look at this nation today, sir, with its vast bureaucracy, which are attempting to cut down or stop expanding.
Attempting and succeeding, eh? Because growth rate last year and this has been less than 1%.
But when do you see them? You never see an unemployed civil servant, do you?
Well, you know,
outside their offices, I mean.
Yes, exactly. You must. They're part of the statistics you were quoting earlier.
Question. Can any Western government today really turn back the bureaucratized social welfare state with which, like a lumpet on an egalitarian basis, we are stuck, to the annoyance of many so-called free enterprisers?
Well, you know, I'll give you a pragmatic and then a philosophical answer. We're not stuck with it, and the proof is what we've just announced in August on family allowances. We say we're going to take $5 from everyone who has family allowances, but we're going to give $200 a year to those who have $18,000 less. So this means that we're using the money we save from giving it to everybody and giving it to those who are in low and middle incomes, less than $18,000. So it can be changed. Now, philosophically, I think there is a good point to make, Jack. It's that a lot of these welfare programs, which tended towards universality. You remember they'd attack the means test. It was demeaning to have an inspector go around and say, how much money have you got? And if you don't have enough, we'll give you the dole. So there was a period when the trend was toward giving grants to everyone, demo grants, anybody over 65, anybody with children under 18, and so on. Now, and I think this was the proper way to go in the past generations, because the work ethic was present then, because people in those days felt that working was the right thing. Today, I think a lot of people are feeling that maybe work isn't all that good, and maybe if they can rip off the state, they will. And in this sense, I think that the government is properly, with this family allowance scheme, returning to help those who need help most, rather than trying to help everybody. We realize that the day when helping everybody was possible because of the rate of growth, and also, as I say, because people, whether it be under UIC or something, wouldn't cheat. You know, well, there are a few cheaters in every game. But by and large, people wouldn't rip off the system.
Remember the time?
Now, philosophically, people are saying, you know, if we can get a free buck out of the government, let's go ahead and do it. And when that time comes, then it's time to adjust.
And that time has come.
And that's why we adjust these welfare schemes.
Snap question. I have 5 elderly stepsisters in Rhodesia. Can they come to Canada? Are they still under that business that white Rhodesians can't come to this country? All things being equal.
I think they can't come under a Rhodesian passport because Rhodesia is not recognized as an independent country by any of the United Nations.
That's the reason.
Especially not by Britain. But
because, you know, Africa's going to explode. It's only a question of time, isn't it?
Well, exactly. And I think it's very important that the apartheid question, the question of discriminating against blacks, be solved before it does explode. And I don't have to tell you the very forward role Canada has been playing in the Commonwealth and in Namibia and in discussion with the frontline presidents to find solutions to these problems.
Anyway, Trudeau's out there. He's going to not rant and rave. That's Webster that does that. You're going to campaign full-time. Not in the by-elections. Low profile for the by-elections.
Not low profile. I'll be in every riding, or just about. I've already been in 3 or 4 of the. I don't necessarily go into the riding itself, but in time permitting, I'm going to try and continue as I have in the past, travel all across the country.
Planning a cabinet shuffle to give us back a cabinet minister in the West?
I'm planning a cabinet shuffle, but I don't think it'll happen before the by-elections, Jack.
Once Gordon Gibson's
You've
elected.
already got 3 cabinet ministers in British Columbia.
Oh,
you know, you had
Iona.
4.
I've forgotten about Iona.
Don't tell her that.
And Ray
Don't tell her
Perot.
that.
Who's the third one?
You should do your homework before interviewing.
Mr. Trudeau, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.